Mike Bloomberg has entered the race for president. Will the billionaire actually have a chance of making it into the White House? Joining me to discuss this possible path to the presidency, Christina Greer, an associate professor of political science at Fordham University, a regular New York One contributor. Nice to have you in early with us today.
I know. Good morning.
So, Mike Bloomberg, as we were discussing in the commercial break, does not enter into something like this lightly. We don't know how much he's spent on polling, but he must have an idea that there's a path to victory here.
Right. I mean, Michael Bloomberg is a lot of things, and careless is not a word that most New Yorkers would give to him. I mean, let's be clear. He knows that Iowa and New Hampshire are pretty much a dead end for him, and so he's skipping them. South Carolina and Nevada, or Nevada and then South Carolina, are the following two, and clearly his polling has said he hasn't made inroads. We know that the top candidates have already spent a lot of time and money there, but haven't really had the resources to spend in Super Tuesday states. So that's where Michael Bloomberg's probably going to target March 3rd and March 10th, with quite a few diverse states, either geographically, racially, ethnically, religious diversity. And so I think that's where he's putting a lot of his money and energy.
These are the Super Tuesday states on the screen now. That represents a huge number of electoral college votes.
And I think Michael Bloomberg fully understands that. I mean, I think a lot of Democrats are pretty much bracing themselves for a contentious DNC in July in Milwaukee. We haven't had one of those in quite some time, but because it seems as though, at least right now, we're still pretty early, but it does seem as though so many different factions within the Democratic Party are looking for very different things in different candidates. Some Democrats want a much more progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the more Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders wing. Other people want a more moderate, sort of the Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris to a certain extent. And Michael Bloomberg's hoping to sort of coalesce around all the different factions.
Buttigieg has had some recent fundraising success. Bernie Sanders, as he did 4 years ago, has had fundraising success, a lot of it from small donors. Let's look at that and then look at those numbers Annika shared with us 20 minutes ago of Mike Bloomberg's wealth. I mean, Bernie Sanders is leading the way at $74 million. Mike Bloomberg could write that check tomorrow.
I mean, he could write it tomorrow, the next day, the following day. I mean, I was talking to your colleague, Errol Lewis, last week about the possibility of a Bloomberg, and he said, you know, Bloomberg is worth $50 billion. And I corrected him. I said, Errol, Bloomberg is actually worth $52 billion. And the reason why that's important is because he could spend $2 billion on this campaign and still be worth $50 billion. And so I think when you have that much of a well of wealth, it really does dictate a lot of the playing field for Michael Bloomberg, because he can pretty much do whatever his heart desires when it comes to finances. I mean, if we remember when he was mayor in 2001, so many people were excited because he said, I'm a billionaire. I'm not beholden to anyone. Some New Yorkers got frustrated during his third term when he said, listen, I'm a billionaire. I'm not beholden to anyone.
Has the I'm a billionaire idea been tarnished by Trump, or do people consider Bloomberg a different kind of billionaire?
I think people consider Bloomberg a billionaire with receipts. I mean, keep in mind, we still haven't seen Trump's taxes, so he could be a thousandaire for all we know. But I think Bloomberg will probably back away from the billionaire label. As we saw in his ad, it's much more of I'm a leader and I know how to actually make businesses work, which is a very different angle than saying I have money and therefore you should trust me.
What's the earliest Mike Bloomberg could end up coming out of this race? He's all in on Super Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially put all the chips on March 3rd and March 10th, and so depending on where he lands in those Super Tuesday states, and depending on what types of states, whether he comes in first place or second place, I think that'll sort of dictate whether or not he stays in or just says, well, thank you, and I'll put my money into climate change and gun safety and all the other great things
he said he was going to do a couple of months ago.
Go.
Yeah. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Pat.
It's 7:36. We've got all the latest news from the Bloomberg campaign in one place on our website, ny1.com/Bloomberg 2020.